This season, we've shared meals, music, and memories with the people who shape our community. As the season outside shifts, we're reminded of what connects it all, the land where we reside.
In the golden prairies of Blackfoot territory, we pay respect to many lives of people who have shaped this land. We must work together to care and work with the ecosystems that provide safety for us all.
My name's Jessica Deacon-Rogers. I'm the Education Program Coordinator at the Helen Schuler Nature Center in Lethbridge. We're currently in the River Valley in the Lethbridge Nature Reserve, right next to the Helen Schuler Nature Center. I did a Bachelor of Science at the university here in Lethbridge and a Bachelor of Education. And I really love teaching. I really love working with people. And so that kind of led me towards kind of a teaching career. But I also grew up outside and spent tons of time outside on our farm in central Alberta. And so spending that time outside, I really learned a ton from those experiences when I was really young. And I started volunteering here when I was in university and was like, this place is amazing. You get to learn from the place you are. I get to spend a lot of time outside exploring with people and teaching them from being in that place and sharing my love of this place and love of nature as well. So one of the things I'm responsible for is all of our education programs for children and families. Spending time outside is a really important way to connect people to nature. So all of our programs here at the Nature Center really focus on getting people outside in Lethbridge, exploring the environment around them, and learning from the place that we live in as well. Southern Alberta is really unique. Lethbridge is right in the very center of the grasslands here in Southern Alberta. And I think that something that a lot of people don't recognize living here in Lethbridge is that the grassland is one of our most endangered ecosystems here in Canada. So grasslands, there's very little prairie left that's kind of intact prairie. So less than 40% of our grasslands here in Alberta are actually still functioning and connected, basically, and intact as they would have been in the past. And a lot of our endangered species are in Southern Alberta as well because of that loss of habitat. And so something that we really focus on here at the Nature Center is that idea that we live in an endangered ecosystem, and I think it's also a bit underappreciated. When people think of grasslands, they think of big open spaces and it's flat and you can see forever and you could see your dog running away for 2 days kind of jokes. But people often don't stop to actually look really closely at the grasslands and all the amazing things that grow here and live here. And so I think it's really important for us to understand where we live and what an important role we play in conservation of this place. So one of the things we actually focus on with the community at large as well is the idea of learning about native plant species. So native plants do a lot of different types of things. They provide food and habitat for all kinds of different species, from little tiny insects like bumblebees to all sorts of birds and mammals as well. And then also using native plants, so not only for habitat in an urban area and protecting existing habitat that's already here, but also looking at the idea of native plants as being drought resistant, not needing a lot of water, not needing a lot of fertilizer and things like that. So the idea of being able to face climate resiliency, but through using native plants and landscaping around your home as well. So our building itself actually has some examples of ways you can use native plants for landscaping. And it looks at demonstrating how you can do that here in Southern Alberta and also the benefits of it. So reducing water is a really important thing. It's very dry here in Southern Alberta. So if you can plant plants that use less water, it's helpful for you, but it's also helpful for the environment. By not having to use fertilizers and pesticides, because the animals on it are actually supposed to be on those native plants, right? You would have insects that are using native plants that would be benefiting that plant and not harming it. So that really helps with the idea of helping the environment, giving back to it, not putting things like fertilizers and chemicals onto plants as well. So grasslands are really interesting. Prairie grasses are really specialized. When we think of grass, we often think of turf, like what we have on our lawn. And when you have turf, you have a bit of grass and then a little bit of roots, and they kind of spread out like a mat. The types of grasses that grow in Southern Alberta out on the grasslands actually have extremely long roots. So most of our prairie grasses would be 90% root, and then 10% is what we can see at the top of that particular grass. Grasses are really interesting because they have those really long roots for a reason. So to be able to withstand things like fire and intensive grazing, in the past it would have been herds of elk and deer and bison that would have grazed upon them. They have their growth point is actually just below the soil. So on most plants like trees and shrubs and things like that, the buds would be at the end or the tips of the tree itself. But with grasses, it's just below the soil. And that's really important because if a grass burns, the whole top is burnt off, but it doesn't really matter because the important parts, where it will grow from, and then the roots that get its nutrients from the soil and hold the soil together are all below where the fire can actually touch them. So grasses evolved with fire and with intensive grazing. And so they have some really unique adaptations that are really, really beneficial. And they would have had more frequent fires than what we have right now. So in the past, we would have had more fires that were less intense rather than very few fires that are extremely intense because we've suppressed fire in this area for a long time.
Out here, where the wind carries stories and the earth holds memory, the flame becomes part of something much bigger than us.
It's not just about cooking, it's about listening, honoring the elements that make everything possible.
So fire and grazing evolved with the plants here on the plains. And so the grasses in particular really do need that fire cycle to be burnt fairly regularly every 5 to 10 years or so, so that the fires are less intense and more frequent, if that makes sense. And when that happens, the top layer of the grass is burnt. Grasses, when they have their leaves die, it builds up around the base of the plant. And it doesn't blow away like leaves on a tree do. And it builds up something called thatch. And so a layer of thatch will form at the base of a grass. With grazers coming and their hooves are breaking up the pieces of the grass when they feed on it, it helps to break that down. And then fire comes through as well, and the thatch builds up. It's a perfect flame starter. And so the fire would come and then burn the grass completely. And that was intentional. It was the prairies evolved, the grasses evolved so that they could burn regularly. And that thatch would be cleared off because the plant needs help to do it, right? They need help from the grazers and help from fire to be able to get those nutrients back in the soil and break the thatch down. Because we haven't had large herds of grazing animals, so elk and deer and bison, for quite a long time, and because we have suppressed fire for a long period of time as well, we've had a lot of things change about grasses themselves. So grasses have actually become a bit of a fire risk in southern Alberta. I know here in the city of Lethbridge, the fire department was quite concerned about some of the thatch buildup in some of our river valley parks because there hadn't been grazers. There's a few deer, but not near the volume or the amount of grazing that was needed to be able to break the thatch up in those parks. And it poses a huge fire risk, right? Because it is literally a whole bunch of dried grass and layers on the ground. So there's a couple of things the city has done. There's a goat grazing program that has been introduced to the River Valley. They rotate them through different sites. And initially it was done for a couple of reasons. So to prevent invasive plants from growing, because invasive plants really change native plant communities, and it also changes how they behave in fire, because those plants that are introduced don't have the same adaptations that a native plant would to fire and the climate that they're living in. The goats that are coming here do a couple of things. So they eat those invasive plants, but they're also mimicking that kind of natural grazing cycle that would have occurred in the past. So they'll graze really heavily in one area, they'll break up the thatch, and then move on to a different location and come back at another time in the summer or another year as well. The fire department doesn't really want to burn river valley parks. It is very hard to control burns in southern Alberta because of the wind and the temperature and things like that. So grazing is a really great alternative to kind of help to moderate that fire risk, but also get the environment to kind of be a little bit more balanced as to how it would have been in the past. So mimicking those natural cycles, but through people managing the system essentially. Having fire in kind of controlled areas. So Indian Battle Park is a great example. There's beautiful fire pits. They've built pads around the fire pits themselves to help kind of prevent sparks and things like that coming off. With it having been so hot and dry, because we are in a drought cycle right now, it's much more likely to have warm temperatures over a long period of time, very little precipitation, which is a perfect fire starter, right? You've got those perfect events for causing a huge fire. And so with having to manage those risks, with having the fire bans, it does help with not having people accidentally start a fire. So I know when there's certain temperatures in place, when we haven't had precipitation for a long period of time, they will put the fire bans into place to help protect the community because it is a really high risk when there's drought, especially. So because we haven't burnt anything for so long, imagine like the grass that I had before, having a little bit of buildup on the ground. Over 5 years, maybe the pile of dead leaves at the bottom would be like this. If it hasn't been burnt or grazed for 20 years or 30 years, you can imagine how big that pile of thatch is getting, right? I've seen thatch on grasses where you reach your hands in and your fingers go right into the center, almost like animal fur. It's just a huge, huge, huge pile of grass that has started to build up, and huge being relative, like I mean like this, which is perfect for burning, right? And so without having that fire and that intensive grazing, it's really built up. So the fire load is really heavy. And so in the past, if it had been grazed and fire had come through more regularly, there would have been a little pile of that thatch that's built up. But because we've suppressed it for so long, it's very large. And it's not healthy for the grass because the nutrients that they need from those dead leaves aren't actually getting cycled back into the soil through grazing or fire. And it's not good because we've got a huge fire risk in that buildup of the grasses themselves too. So with having all that fire load on the ground with those dead leaves, the fires, if they do happen, will be much, much more intense because there's a lot more material to burn, right? Which in the past would have naturally been cycled back through the soil and through the grazing animals that fed on it too, right? So knowing when and where it is a good spot to have a fire. Fires are wonderful. It's such a nice way to spend time outside. It's such a wonderful way to cook. I also really enjoy eating and sharing food with people around a fire is a really special thing to do. So knowing if we do have fire bans and respecting them here in Southern Alberta and recognizing why we have them, because it is a mechanism to help preserve this place, to help prevent those really large fire events. Knowing also where you're visiting as well. So there's lots of different places to spend time in Lethbridge. The River Valley is beautiful. There's lots of parks around the Lethbridge area that you can go to. So knowing where you could spend time, where you would be allowed to have a fire and where you wouldn't be allowed to have a fire, and getting to know the place that you live as well. So spending time outside is a really important way to learn. You may not know what things are called, but you recognize what they are and get to know them a little bit as well. So learning about the place that you live is a really important piece of that as well.
The fire now subsides. From traveling through kitchens all throughout our community, we have traded recipes for rhythm, and we have found meaning in the stories that flavor this place we have lived.
Thank you for coming with us into the heart of the kitchen, into song, into the wild. Wherever the seasons of life take you, may you keep listening, keep learning, and keep sharing your sound.